right, I don't know if I can follow that up, but I'll try. I'm Jamil Grimes. So happy to be with each of you again. I have a lot to say, so I'm going to try and be very mindful of the time. As Kelsey did, I'll start with updating you on where I am academically and what has happened over the past year, and include field educational activity in that. So last year was, I mean, there were a lot of classes that I took that, that felt slightly familiar coming into this program as a religion undergrad. So I had some familiarity with formal theological education before I got here. But it was good to have, I think one of the things that the professors here do so well is they challenge your familiarity with a subject. So you may come in thinking that you already know the Hebrew Bible or the New Testament, and they just completely disturb all of that and show you what you've been missing and what other perspectives are out there. So I really appreciate Dr. Johanna Boss doing that, for example, with Scripture 1. So she was great with that. Over the January term, so earlier this year, 2016, I did 2 courses, Resistance and Reconciliation, and then also an Introduction to Black Church Studies. In both of those classes, there was a real deliberate engagement of race and racism and the impacts of that. Not only how that's affecting us nationally, but we're at a place now, Louisville Seminary, where we're really discussing that institutionally and how we can live out being an anti-racist institution. So it was good to really get a lot of background information in that and connect the dots with where I am here at Louisville Seminary and how I can better participate in where we hope to go for the future. So far as field education, last year around this time when I was talking with you all, I was going into an agency placement with the Kentucky Council of Churches. Some of you may be familiar with it. It's currently under the direction of Reverend Dr. Peggy Hines, who has some connections with the Presbyterian Church. It's a statewide ecumenical organization, so the focus is on Christian unity, but they also do a lot of advocacy and are really oriented towards social justice. So when the new year began, in addition to classes, I also got to spend a lot of time shadowing Peggy as she went to the state capitol in Frankfurt to see what advocacy looks like, you know, in the legislative sphere. So sitting down and having conversations with lawmakers and, you know, representing the interests of the member denominations that are connected to the council was a real privilege and a huge learning experience. I want to say some more also about ecumenism in general. You know, just coming from where I was personally, I didn't have a lot of experience with that. I think I was slightly familiar with the idea of we're all Christians, so we should do things together. But but what does that actually look like? And how do you create space for Christians of varying traditions to be together and to be church together, while at the same time, you know, maintaining their distinct and unique identity? That's not always easy, and that takes some real planning. So I got to be a part of, you know, some planning efforts for that sort of thing to happen. And then also got to travel to Washington, D.C. I didn't even mention this for ecumenical advocacy days, and that's a huge event. So just a real privilege to be a part of that. This summer, where I just kind of lead you into where I am now, I took a few courses over the summer that were really transformative. One was a class on religious pluralism, basically interreligious dialogue, which, you know, I think continues to be a hot topic and very relevant in the church today. So how do we engage the religious other as our population becomes more religiously diverse? And I got to take the class with Paul Knitter, who is a premier, okay, we're talking, I mean, globally known, premier interreligious scholar. So just to be in the classroom with him was terrific. And I'm so thankful that the seminary allows for that sort of thing to happen with this connection to SCOOP, the Seminary Consortium for Urban Pastoral Education, which is in Chicago. So this counted as a credit for my MDiv program here. Get to travel there. I got to stay at McCormick Seminary for minimal cost and then take this class with Paul Knitter. I mean, it was outstanding, outstanding. I can't say how delightful it was to be in the room with him. And so, okay, I'm going to try and connect this with, okay, I had a course this summer on Baptist history and heritage. So I'm Baptist. And I say this because Melanie and Tim both had experiences where they were really introduced or reintroduced, if you will, to what it means to be a Presbyterian. So this was a similar experience for me as a Baptist. Now that may be disappointing to hear at a Presbyterian institution, but coming out of the class with Paul Knitter and seeing, recognizing that religious plurality, religious difference, religious manyness is not just a matter of fact, but it's a matter of providence. You know, like we're different not just because, but because God intends for us to be different. Like diversity is a gift. So being Baptist and being Presbyterian, having all of that different and together, that's a great thing. You know, I feel like Tim needs me to be Baptist. And I need Tim to be Presbyterian. And I need Tim to be Presbyterian. We enrich one another. We enrich one another's Christian identity. So I was making those sort of connections between those classes there, and that was just really, really good to experience. So I'm looking forward to this year. One of the really interesting things that I'm doing is an independent study with Scott Williamson, who's a professor of ethics here. And the project, or the study is focused on criminal justice reform and specifically developing an educational project that can be taken to congregations so that congregations are given the information that they need to intelligently engage the criminal justice system, know how it's functioning, what it's actually doing, and then compare that with the theological values that we claim as a community. And then, okay, what's the discontinuity or incongruency between those two things? So what's actually happening in the criminal justice system that should not be happening based on our theological values? What's not happening that should be happening based on our theological values? Really interesting class, and this is actually born out of some of the work that I did with the Kentucky Council of Churches, because one of the focuses was criminal justice reform, abolition of the death penalty, felony expungement, these sort of things. So to connect that with an independent study where I can actually develop a project and then take that to congregations is really awesome. I'm looking forward to completing that with Dr. Williamson.
Were you a cop before?
I was.
Yeah, I remember.
Yes. I spent 8 years, 8 years as a police officer in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. So I have a lot of practical, personal experience that I can bring to this academic endeavor, which is very useful. So I'll conclude with just some personal notes. You may also remember when I came here. It was difficult because I was separating from my 2 children who were living in Alabama at the time. Well, they are now here with me. They are now here with me. It's really, really great. They came August and started school. My son just turned 8. He had a birthday on Tuesday. So he's in 2nd grade at Field Elementary, loving life. My daughter, who is 4, started preschool with Kelsey's daughter. She is doing great as well. So that's just been a wonderful change. It's certainly more difficult and it's taken some adapting to get used to, but it's really worth it and has made a world of difference for my emotional well-being, I would say. So I'm definitely grateful to God for that happening. Thank you.